How well do you think our public school system in the United States is doing as far as literacy? Or how poorly do you think we're doing in this country regarding literacy? What percentage of children do you believe are at or below reading level in the United States? Truthfully, the numbers are not great. However, with technology, we can turn this ship around quickly. From the Soar Studios, this is the AI to Uplift Humanity podcast. I'm Justin Brady, and today I'm joined with Dr. Philip Hickman, the CEO and founder of Playbook. Dr. Hickman, thanks for coming on the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
Probably the best place to start is to give the listeners, because you're in TechStars program, you're in startup mode in the startup world, entrepreneurial world, so you're well practiced at this. So give people that 30-second elevator pitch so they kind of have an idea of what the company is, what your background is, and then I have just tons of questions for you.
Yeah, 30 seconds for the company. It's an innovative reading technology that uses artificial intelligence, natural language processing, and speech recognition to help children learn how to read. Just a simplistic version is that the way that we assess and intervene when reading, we have kids read a paragraph and answer multiple choice questions. Well, first of all, that's not basic reading. That's reading comprehension. But it's not really reading comprehension, because if you don't hear the child, reading comprehension has two parts. One is reading and the second is understanding. And so if you never hear the child read, then there's no way. So we have been failing kids by going with that model of assessment. And we, for the first time, have technology that can hear the child read all the way down to the phonemic level. So our speech engine can hear the utterance of speech, the unit of speech, so we can hear phonemes. So for instance, if a child says bat, we hear b, at, and we can tell you if that child has said those phonics sounds correctly.
Okay, this is fascinating. So I think a lot of people think if a kid is just reading, they're reading the words on the page, we can just cross that off the list and call it a success. And you're saying that's not true.
Well, there's only 5 ways to learn how to read or that encompasses reading. And that is phonics, phonemic or phonemes, comprehension, reading fluency, and vocabulary. So those 5 components make up reading. The problem is that students get stuck when you notice students that cannot read when they're at reading fluency, because they spend so much energy trying to decode a word that their fluency is bad, and they have too much energy in decoding that they don't have time to understand what they read. So if the sequence of events was correct, a child would learn phonics, that letters have sounds, then phonemes, that the combination makes a word, and then they will be able to read fluently because they don't have to decode words. It becomes automatic. As they read fluently, then they're also able to comprehend what they read. And then vocabulary, the more they read, the more vocabulary they pick up. So it's only 5, categories. It doesn't have anything to do with a book or written print or digital print or any of those kind of things. A child has to have those 5 things. Where it falls is that the science of reading says that they have to have the foundation, that phonics and that phoneme. And that's what we are lacking. Our children look like a Swiss cheese effect. They have holes in their foundations, and we have to be able to identify those lack of phonic sounds and phonemes that they have, and we have to be able to help them learn it. That's what my technology is able to do with accuracy, with standardization. We have a 98% accuracy rate.
Whoa.
And because we develop a custom language model. And so it's different from Alexa or Google, where they're listening for millions and millions and millions of words. And so our custom language model allows us to focus on the text that child is reading, and it lessens the prediction or the guess. But then it's able to hear every unit of speech as a child is speaking.
Okay.
Both in English and Spanish, by the way, and we're adding 4 other languages.
My word. Okay. So, I mean, you blew my mind just with these 5 components of reading. I didn't even know it was that sophisticated. So I think, okay, this is that's a little mind blowing. One of the I like what you said, because most people take speech recognition technology and robot understanding and AI, and they think of those things, right? Google Assistant and Alexa. But those are basically, as you indicated, trying to listen for every word under the sun and trying to make sense of it. But your technology is a lot more focused on the actual way speech is formed. And I don't know if this is correct, so you can correct me if I'm wrong. But what I'm hearing you say is when a child is reading and when they're pronouncing these words, you can almost hear, I guess it's a well-tuned ear, you can hear the fact that they're trying to, or that they're utilizing more energy in trying to pronounce a word. And in your mind as an educator, that sends up red flags. But to the more lay person like myself, I might not necessarily catch that. And so your technology is effectively catching those challenge points, those issues.
Yes. In a way, in a layman's way, you're correct. So what you were describing was a lot of times, again, when we do the assessment and we have children read small paragraphs or short stories and they answer multiple choice questions, that's the only means that we have, whether you utilize technology or you're doing paper and pencil.
Sure. And
we assume that child has reading issues because they didn't answer those questions correctly, right? But really, and that's assume that they have basic reading issues, which they probably do. But we don't know until we're able to listen to that child read, because it may be a comprehension issue, right? And see, comprehension even has different categories. So you may be trying to find understanding the main idea, or you may be inferencing or summarizing. All of those are different categories in comprehension. You do not know what the child's deficit is until first you are able to assess the reading. Now, the only way that we're able to really do that is a teacher sit next to a child and they do what is called a running records. And that takes about 20 minutes per child. And you're supposed to do it once a week. If you do 20 minutes per child, you think of how many children they have in a classroom, then it's almost impossible to do. And it's not being done with consistency, and it's not being done with fidelity. My technology can do it in seconds every time a child picks up a book and read. And, we don't have to wait for benchmarking, meaning a 3-week test. Every 3 weeks, we assess the child. We assess the child every second, every minute, every day, every hour, and it's digital. So at any environment, we're device agnostic. So at home, at school, on a bus stop, whatever it is we're collecting data and we're giving recommendations back to the teacher and to the students. And by the way, we have pretty sophisticated games built in where a student earns digital currency for the books that they read at the proficiency level. And they can use those currencies to play, or we have over 150 games that we label arcade games, but they're very sophisticated video games. And we only allow them to play 5 or 10 minutes so that they can continue to be motivated to read and earn these tokens.
Sure. Okay. I remember when I was a kid, it was like the pizza stuff from Pizza Hut. You got like the stars and stuff.
Yeah, we're way past that.
Yeah, it sounds like it. It's one of the things you said was fascinating, but like when I travel around even the United States alone, right? I'll go to the South and I'll hear a different accent. I'll go up to the North and I'll hear like that traditional Wisconsin accent. I'll go over to Boston, I'll hear a different accent. Anywhere you go in this country, accents and the way people form words are different. So how does the technology, I don't know what the right word is for this, but how does the technology anticipate for that? And will it correct like a Bostonian, for example, and say you're saying that word wrong? Or will it say, that's Bostonian, that's how they say it? Like, how does it adjust for that?
That's a very good question. First of all, just to give you kind of background, we're one of the only ones that have a children's voice data set. So even if you look at Google or Alexa, all of them are trained. Their AI is trained with adult voices. So it's very difficult. A child's voice change every second, every day or whatever.
Yeah,
they may lose a tooth and all of a sudden it's frog instead of frog, right? Like, or their voice is raspy, it starts to crack, and through puberty, all those kind of things. So one is we have to train on that data set. The other thing is we have to train in different accents. So we have over 145 different accents.
Oh, my word.
Then we also take into account regional dialects. And that's what you're talking about, regional dialects. And so obviously it gets smarter, right? The more users, the more we're able to label, the more we're able to get smart. But just a simple explanation also that we do correct, because you have to give kids a toolkit. Like, they can use the tools anytime they want to. It doesn't mean that what they're doing is bad because it's appropriate for their environment. Here's an example. In the Midwest, we may say mittens, and mittens, and in the East Coast, they may say mittens. You know,
Oh,
and so conceptually, you understand mittens means mittens,
right.
but you are pronouncing the word wrong. And so we give you credit for the conceptual that you understand it, but we also, I mean, because there's no way that you can spell mittens. Like,
Right.
I don't know how to spell that, right? And so that is not how you're pronouncing it, tends to be how you spell, because that's the words, the letter sounds, the phonemes that you're hearing when you're breaking it down in your head. And so we still give a child, remediation in that sense.
Sure.
One of the ways we do it is we actually recommend academic games, and they're free instead of the tokens. But for the first time, our academic games involve voice. We're able to do that. Everybody else just has sorting games and all those kind of things, but we're able to incorporate voice, and so we're able to have the child practice those skills and correct those skills in a fun and engaging way.
That's crazy. And, because that is, I imagine there is a very, especially from an AI standpoint, right? Like, this is something that humans, at least humans trained in the human voice, and they're maybe speech pathologists, or maybe they're experts in some degree. Like, it's easy for them to figure this stuff out, right? And say that's an accent, or that's actually a mispronunciation of a word. But for an AI, that is a crazy, and I know just enough about AI and how to program it, maybe more than the lay person, but I do know enough to know that is a very, very challenging problem. So bravo for figuring that out and tackling the issue.
And early on, we have manual ways to correct it, right?
Right.
Like, we change the sensitivity. And then the other way is that the phonemic breakdown, the units of speech are also given to the parent, teacher, and student. And so, the teacher also can make changes and say, no, this is correct or this is wrong. And the parent can suggest if there are changes that need to be made. But again, we're very accurate. But we have to train on different, even more accents, because regional dialects are so, even within a region, they're still regional dialects.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So I want to get into the state of reading in general, because clearly, startup people, entrepreneurs, founders like yourself, whenever they create a startup, the way they pitch investors and the way they pitch people to get this started is, here is the problem, right? So clearly you saw a problem, and I want to get back to the intro. What percentage of children are reading at like below grade level? Clearly there's a need for this because you created it. So what are we dealing with?
Right. And just let's get back to the intro too, as far as you said, introduce myself. So I have 5 graduate degrees and a doctorate. I did everything in the field of education, from an assistant teacher to a teacher. I was a counselor. I was a school psychologist. I was a principal in areas like East St. Louis, Chicago. I was a area superintendent in Kansas City. I was also an assistant and area superintendent in Houston Independent School District, which is the 7th largest in the nation. We had 300 schools, 210,000 students, and I was a superintendent in Mississippi. And the reading crisis, it doesn't stop. As a matter of fact, a lot of people say it's the pandemic, or it's a national reading crisis, right? It's what people say is that it is the new national security. Because if a child is not able to read, and in the future, obviously, they're going to have that little black box in their hand, and it's going to overload them with information. If they're not able to critically read through that information and critically think and apply it, one is they're going to be misled, and two is, that's going to be a part of their job. It's not going to just have facts. It's going to be too much information out there. You have to be able to decipher. And so to talk about the statistics, 75% of fourth graders, and this was 2019, right before COVID, and this was strong research, 75% of fourth graders in the entire United States read below grade level. And by the way, 73% of high school dropouts, 75% of crime created in the United States created by high school dropouts.
Wow.
And then 82% of prison inmates have a reading problem that has just never been solved. And so on average, the United States spends $335 billion on individuals with low literacy. And so it's a problem. It's a huge problem.
So, I mean, the natural question is, so all your numbers raise a lot of it's scary but fascinating at the same time. 75% of children at fourth grade are reading below grade level. So that's 3 out of 4. 82% of prison inmates have a reading problem that's never been addressed. 75% of crime is committed by high school dropouts. And I think you said we're throwing $335 billion at this right now and still have this low literacy rate. So the big question I think in everybody's mind is this a possible to solve problem, or is this insurmountable? And I think it's a fair question because it sounds daunting.
No, actually, the research says that 90% of children, if given the correct instruction, should learn how to read on grade level on time. So that same research that talked about 75% of fourth graders, it also talked about it was around 65 to 70% of teachers reported teaching the wrong method of reading. So we're just now focusing on the science of reading. So, there's so many fads that go on and reading, as far as the ability to learn how to teach reading is not a part of the college curriculum. An elementary teacher may take one class or so of reading because in elementary you have to teach all the subjects, right? But yet we expect them to understand how to teach reading. I think it was like 90% of teachers said that they learn how to teach reading on the job from colleagues as opposed to from universities.
Wow. What was that number?
Yeah, it was like 90%.
Of teachers learned how to teach reading from colleagues?
Yes.
Oh my word.
Same research. And one of the problems and so there's also other surrounding problems. So we have a national teacher shortage.
Yeah, true.
And so everybody understands that fact. But what they ignore is not only do we have a national teacher shortage, we have a national teacher quality shortage,
wow.
Right? So as a superintendent, at times, and this is unfortunate, it's not a brag or anything, but at times we just have to put warm bodies in classes. And so if you had a degree, as a matter of fact, I was talking to a colleague yesterday, and he said in his area, all you have to do is have a high school diploma and be out of high school for 2 years to be a sub. And so what you do with a sub is you end up, you're not going to be able to replace a sub with a teacher. So that sub ends up being there the whole year as the teacher. Yeah. And then what makes it worse? So if everybody don't want to believe in technology or try to figure out how to solve the problem utilizing technology, not eliminating the human, but utilizing technology, if you look at the paper, there are several universities that have closed their education programs because they don't have enough students who are enrolled in it.
Wow.
So if you have a teacher shortage and you don't have teachers going into universities, then we are going. It's a level of national security if we don't address that problem right now.
Yeah,
if we don't look at how to figure out how to teach the basis of everything, which is reading. You can't do math without reading. Math has word problems.
Yeah.
Science, social studies, everything you can think of.
But it's like, I think we're living in an age where people make really extreme, wild statements all the time. And so everybody listening, I want to caution you and ask you to listen very closely to what Dr. Hickman said, because you said we may have a national security problem from this. And that's entirely accurate if you look at the data. It's not sensationalist at all, because if 82% of prison inmates have a reading problem that's never been addressed, and 75% of crime is committed by high school dropouts, if we don't get the literacy problem solved, that is a big deal. That turns into, as you said, it's a kind of how did you say it again? A national emergency, or what?
It's a level of national security.
Yeah, that's absolutely crazy. So here's the difficult spot that our children are in. Then, right? They're kind of in between a rock and a hard place, because when I was a kid, my parents read to me. Right? That's how I learned. They read to me. They read stories. But if there is this high percentage of prison inmates that are struggling with this problem, 82%, and there's a lot of high schoolers dropping out. Is this also a parenting problem? Like, are parents not reading to kids anymore because they also struggle with the literacy issue and it's been unaddressed?
Well, let's be clear. Like, for maybe 20 or 30 years, we already know the factors that equate to a felony student or high school dropout.
Yeah.
right? Like we know there's more than just parent issues that are factors. And then and combined with that, we have a new generation called the working poor. That means that people are working 17, 18 hours a day just to maintain poverty. So the consequence of that is no, they're not at home. They're not at home because they're being neglectful. They're trying to do the right thing. They're not at home because they're working hard just to keep afloat, right?
Yeah.
And so we have to look at the responsibility of educators in a sense. So what I'm saying is the minute second that child walks to that door, we have to be intentional.
Sure.
In fact, let's be intentional on the bus. So when I was a superintendent, we put Wi-Fi on the buses. And so students had study labs. They had phones before. This was 2014, 15, 16. And this is when students were concerned with minutes on their cellular phone. And so, before I would say, just get on your phone and, do this. And here's some, we're going to send out, work breaks and all those kind of things and fun games. And the kids are like, Dr. Hickman, I don't want to waste my minutes. And so we put Wi-Fi on the buses. So, I mean, we were intentional about every interaction we have with a child,
right?
Because it's not a lot. It's a lot of time wasted. If you think about a teacher that has to sit down and assess a child, it takes them 20 minutes to assess one child. And yet I developed a technology that does it instantaneously. And we're still afraid of technology. That becomes an education issue. Right.
And what you're saying, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like, sure, there could be some issues that can be solved by parenting, but we can either address this issue and make efforts to address it or ignore it. Those are your options. So let's address it.
Yeah, well, we have to. Okay. So education is a field that we have to intervene despite the parent.
Right. Wow.
If we know that there's if we know that that's a problem, then why we keep pointing the finger at that problem? We're not making any provision to help, right? Like, how do you extend the school day? Like, why are we still having snow days and sending kids home without work technology? We already know how to do things virtually.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like some of those things don't make sense during the summer. Like, how come we're not extending summer? How come we're not extending the summer activity, whether it's virtual, whether it's in person, however you do it, a mixed bag? Why can't it be eclectic? Like, some students need in person.
Yeah.
Some students can benefit and grow more virtually. But we just cannot sit back and do the banker hour model.
Yeah. And this is where, as you pointed out, like 4 or 5 minutes ago, like AI sometimes gets a bad rap, and it's very undeserved. But, some people always think of the nightmare scenario, like AI is going to take all our jobs. But in this scenario, when you're facing a teacher shortage, and like you said, a teacher quality problem, and parents are working really, really hard to put food on the table, you need technology that can help do this stuff. You need technology that can fill that gap. It's not a bad thing. And like any technology out there, sure, some people can use it for nefarious reasons. Just like, you can use I can use a spoon to eat healthy soup, or I can use a spoon to eat ice cream. But we do need an AI solution, because, as you said, technology, we can get that in all the homes. We can get Wi-Fi on buses, and if we get a technology that can help these kids read, that's a really good solution. We can do that now without having to staff up with teachers, and we can do that now despite parents struggling to put food on the table and having their time stretched thin.
Right. I exactly agree. I mean, there's so much differentiation between in a classroom where students are at nowadays that that a teacher has to have these tools to be able to be precise about what they're doing to save time. And they don't have time to explore what are the different problems of all the different students if you have technology that can diagnose and prescribe.
Yeah. And my wife's a teacher. She teaches at a school that's 97% poverty rate. And there are she would love to have more resources. She would love to have more staff to help these students. But as you've illustrated, that's not on the table. And so
it's not on the table.
So technology solutions are AI technology solutions are the most obvious and most direct way to solve this. What's going to be the challenge, do you think, in rolling technology solutions into like is there going to be a leadership challenge? Like, are superintendents going to push back? Are they going to be accepting of this? What's going to be the challenge at getting technology like this into the educational climate?
Yeah, we're already into the school systems and it's being received. But you're right. Like the amount of questions that I have, or what they try to compare it to, solutions that we know don't work, it's kind of scary, right? But there's a change theory, implementation, change is scary because people have to give up their old traditional practices that even though that they think work, is not working. And so some of that issue is that there's an administrative issue, right? Because we have still the beliefs that we're trying to educate kids for our past instead of their future. And that's scary because we know that the children have to have some aspect of technology and they have to have an aspect of reading. The research is clear. I don't know if there was an article that said 85% of jobs in 2030 that will exist have not been invented yet. Well, 2030 is 8 years from now.
Yeah.
So 85% of jobs that will exist, have not been invented yet, but they will have technology and reading. And so, if we're not preparing kids for that, and it's still the unknown, how do you prepare kids for the unknown? Well, there's different things. One is you have to have that basis of reading. And then you go on the tenets of technology. You teach creativity, you teach problem solving, you teach communication and collaboration. And when you put those 3 C's together, then you have a child that's ready for the future that can apply anything. Right. Because right now, school is just focused on regurgitating facts and memorization. Well, technology is already going to have that automated. Like I said, that black box, you're going to be able to pull up anything, any information.
And what's fascinating about this is, like I told you, my wife teaches 97% poverty rate school. And then there's occasional times I will volunteer for this. It's a business camp. And what's fascinating to me is many of these problems, indeed, if you have like lower income, right, some of these problems are exacerbated, obviously. But what's fascinating,
your wife's a saint. She's a saint.
She absolutely is. But what's fascinating to me is I went to this business camp, and even among students that are well off, they have a lot of money, and their parents paid to put them through this business camp. We had a ton of scholarship students as well. But like I was teaching in this media track, that's what we called it. And even these students, I was blown away that you give these, there were these computers in there, they were supposed to write. Even these students who are from more affluent families with higher income didn't know very basic things about reading and writing. Like they didn't even know how to type. So this is not just a problem if everyone's getting it in their head that this is only a problem in poor areas and everyone else is fine, that couldn't be further from the truth. This is a big problem that spans all demographics and income levels. But
75% of all children in the United States. Yeah. So it goes beyond. Now, it's exasperated in poverty areas. Your wife knows that.
Yeah, she does.
Right? But what I'm saying is that this is affecting everyone. Right. It's no limit. And you see the benefit. You see not the benefit, but you see the results of it even in affluent areas, like you said.
Yeah.
Now that they do utilize technology different in affluent areas. So in poverty areas, they use technology to point and click in gaming. Just 1 + 1 is 2. Push the button, boom, little bubbles blow or something like that.
Right.
Where in more affluent areas, they use technology to create, to research, to problem solve, and find solutions and those kind of things. And so, that's important too. Is that we have to teach the utilization of technology different because it's still the basis of the United States. When they talk about the have and have nots and that it's going to be a big gap in the future, that's because, we're training kids still for that automation role. And even McDonald's is, eliminating the kid at the front counter, right? Even McDonald's has the little drinks that go through where back in the days we used to have a person who put the drinks. But even when I talked to my friend that owned a few McDonald's and they talked about how much they're automating, I was like, wow, you're replacing jobs. And they said, no, we're repurposing jobs. Who do you think programs that automation? Who do you think maintains that technology?
Right.
All those kind of things. So we're creating jobs, but the problem is people are still stuck in the other roles. I mean, there's technology that even can replace lawyers. If you think about all the technology that replace basic level doctors and are actually more accurate than doctors in diagnosing, and there's technology that actually that's surgery that performs surgery.
Yeah.
So we just have to look at it different. And the basis of it is we have to teach these babies how to read. They're going to be taking care of us.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to shift gears a little bit here as we close this out. And who do you owe your success to, your literary success to? Like who is that mentor or teacher in your life that saw something in you that maybe you didn't see in yourself?
My grandmother Ruby. My grandmother Ruby, I was a struggling reader, didn't know I had dyslexic. And my grandmother taught me how to read in fourth grade. She later passed away on my fifth grade birthday. But that gift that she gave me, it allowed me to be successful in school, play sports and all those kind of things, but just be very successful in school and want to continue to drive. And then my mother was a teacher without a certification, but she was, she inspired me of how she worked with kids and educated kids. That was something that I, wanted to do in my career path.
So when did you shift your attention to that career path, education as a way to uplift humanity? Was it Grandma Ruby and your mom, or were there others that pushed you that direction later? Was there a course you took, an interaction that happened?
No, it actually, I've even received a scholarship from Bill Clinton when I was a high school student for work that I did in some of the school systems and volunteer in Delano School for the Orthopedic Handicap, those kind of things. And of course, my other degrees are in psychology and brain science and human learning, statistics and those kind of things. So I always love understanding why people learn and communication disorders as well. And so the language behind it. But yeah, I had to go a different route at first because I went as a school psychologist in communication disorders. And then I came back to special education. But yeah, there was a lot of people in my life. I mean, I had a good school experience, with different folks in my school and even in high school. Even though, I was always just taught just kind of to be the best at whatever it is I attempted. But I had a counselor, Connie Goebbels, who actually was putting me in honors classes that I didn't know. I actually reunited with her, a couple of years ago. And I'm like, I seen my high school transcript. Where did these classes come from? Why was I in college prep classes and all those kind of things? And she just saw something in me. And so, it took people like that.
Grandma Ruby, your mom, and Connie, thank you to those ladies that helped you along your way. That's incredible. By the way, we're both in the same Grandma Ruby club. I also had a Grandma Ruby, and she was awesome. Right, really quick question before we end. What was a book that changed your life, or what was a book, did it change your life, and how did it impact your behavior?
One of the books that I wrote was also a spinoff of Good to Great. Just as a leader, although I had a gift to be charismatic and understand, from psychology, understand people, but that book sparked my, to be a level 5 leader, right? Like to not be selfish and to be able to walk away from an organization and that there are enough systems and things in place that organization and the people are in the right place, that the organization is running without you. And that's hard for a lot of leaders because they like to be the center of that attention, and then other just life lessons. I wrote in one of my books is called Execution by Firing Squad: Effective Leadership When You're the Target. I described that when I'm driving.
That's a title.
It was when I was a superintendent in Mississippi. It was tumultuous, right? It was one of the worst districts in the United States. I brought it to the top 20 in the nation in technology innovation and the top in Mississippi. But at the same time, I was held at gunpoint. I was, getting slur words written on my car. My brakes were cut and those kind of things.
Unbelievable.
But still focused on doing the right thing for kids, despite the environment, right? But what I said in there is that one of the things that I noticed is that when I drove through Tennessee, there were fruit trees. And then when I went, as soon as I crossed the border over Mississippi, cotton is what was growing. And, basically the summation of that is climate determines what grows.
Sure.
And so as a leader, if you don't create that culture and that climate within your organization, something's going to grow.
Right.
And whatever climate is ruling at the time and whatever climate is king, that is what's going to grow. And I think that's very important to understand as a leader, is creating that culture and that climate and focusing on it.
Yeah, there's no good place to end this conversation, Dr. Hickman, but if there is a good place, that's probably as good as it gets right there with that quote. Dr. Philip Hickman, CEO and founder of Playbook. If people want to reach out to you, they want to learn more about Playbook, or maybe they're like a superintendent, a principal, and they want to get started with this technology in their company, what's the most direct path?
Yeah, go to our website. It's www.playbookeducation.com. And that's Playbook, PLABOOK, education.com. A lot of people ask, why are you misspelling play? And actually, it's a reading joke, which is it's actually a true way to spell it. If it's a multisyllabic word, then the vowel screams its name. And so you have to have a really deep understanding of reading to understand why that's written like that. But yeah, Playbook, PLABOOK, education.com.
Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Hickman. I really appreciate it. Dr. Philip Hickman, CEO and founder of Playbook. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
And thank you so much for joining me and listening. Hey, before I let you go, wouldn't it be really cool if you could upload all your video and like magic, the entire video was searchable by keyword. You just put any keyword, any key phrase, and you're immediately taken to the exact timestamp and exact word or phrase that you typed in. Like all your video. Wouldn't that be kind of cool? Well, let me blow your mind. It exists. It's called deep search technology. It looks beyond descriptions and tags and keywords that you pre-select into the meaning and intent of a video, so you can search across your entire video archive and be instantly transported to the specific clip you were looking for at the specific timestamp. I know it sounds really expensive, but you can upload 10 hours for free and have deep search tech on your website if you just go to soar.com/deep search. Again, that's soar.com/deep search. SOAR.com/deep search. And hey, thanks for listening today. This is the AI to Uplift Humanity podcast.